Hello everybody and welcome back to the inn. It's been a while. Our innkeeper is lazy, but we have a special treat for you. Did you say no, I'm not?
No, I'm not lazy. Life happens, man.
I thought for sure I said, our innkeeper's lazy. I'm like, no, I'm not!
No. Your innkeeper's not lazy. Your innkeeper is very much dealing with life and stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, but we have a special treat for you. We're gonna be doing some more of these, but we decided we're gonna start from the front and kind of work our way back. Each set has different rules. Expansions are different from adventures, but we're gonna start with the most recent one, excluding Knights of the Frozen Throne. We'll wait until the next expansion releases before we even tackle that one. And we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss our picks for the top 20, or what we actually believe are the top 20 cards in Journey to Un'Goro. Now, here are the rules for expansions. We fought over this. We pretty much narrowed it down to 20 cards. However, we did not want to beat ourselves to a bloody pulp. So, while we have narrowed all of the expansion down to 20 of the best cards, so 20 of the best, the top 20 cards, these are in no particular order. What I did is I pretty much wrote them down from 1 to 20 in order how they would appear in the in your collection, and then I went to a random sequence generator and I randomized the numbers. So these are in a completely random order, and these are not basically these are not in order of least to greatest. We're not even going to say which one's better. These are just the top 20 cards from Journey to Un'Goro. Got that? Good. So, starting off, Living Mana. Yeah. I don't think either of us thought this was going to actually be a big card when it actually was first announced. But the idea of just sacrificing your mana and swarming a board for a finisher and an aggro deck, pretty effective. I think this was a surprise inclusion into the list, mainly because I think when we first started playing Un'Goro, we didn't think this would be such a big contender, such a major card, and yet it's a card that you can kind of expect aggro druids and some druids in general to play. It's just that effective, because basically as N'Zoth has shown us, swarming the board is an effective use of mana, and sometimes there's no coming back from that one. So yeah, Living Mana, really effective card, really good card, and that's how we're starting off this video.
Oh, Living Mana. Let me count how many toes I have left on my foot from where I had to basically cram my foot in my mouth for saying, yeah, this card's gonna be worthless. Oh, that was dumb. I mean, even if you hit the druid with a devolve, if you don't immediately have something to follow up and just wipe their board entirely, they still have the ability to go, okay, or at least before the nerfs happened yesterday, they still have the ability to go Innervate, Savage Roar, Finisher. And just, this card just, it kind of came out of nowhere, because it's just you drop it on either like your turn 5 or your turn 7, somewhere in that range, and then just boom, board fill. So your opponent has to immediately have something to be able to nuke and cook your board. So if they don't have it, then they're taking at least anywhere from 10 to 14 damage. Or it's, oh hey look, here's the Savage Roar, dead. Or, oh hey look, I'm going to pump all these up to 3/3s now, and you're still dead. Or at least in trouble of being dead. It made aggro druid a very high-end, and still a high-end staple in the metagame today. So, wow. Just Living Mana. Wow.
Yeah. Well, up next, Gentle Megasaur.
Oh, Gentle Megasaur. This is the one that I get to tackle. Murlocs, man. You're gonna play this on your turn 4 for potential curve, or just because, like, oh hey look, I have Murlocs on board. and now they all get powered, or at least they get healthier or whatever. This thing can make your Murlocs nasty, and it's just a potential turn 4 game ender if you've got the right board for it, or just something to where it's just like, well, I'm in trouble. Let me just sit over here in the corner now and just watch my face get repeatedly beaten by a mid-range paladin, or my personal favorite, the Knights of the Frozen Throne version of my Murloc Quest Shaman deck. So it's just like, yeah, this thing was just absolutely disgusting.
I know when Eddie and I were sitting down to actually compile this list, we fought over the inclusion of Gentle Megasaur. I was for it. Eddie was in favor of another card, which we're not going to go into because we're early on the list. We don't want spoilers of what is and is not on this list. But it came down to the wire, and essentially the case I made was I don't think that Murlocidin would be as effective and as big a meta deck as it is without Gentle Megasaur. Gentle Megasaur by itself wins games. Even if you don't have that many Murlocs on board, it's just a big, beefy minion in its own right. And there's really not many downsides to just playing it outright. And if you have Murlocs on board, you're in trouble. Especially if you're Murlocidin and you're trying to swarm the board. Then you're in a lot of trouble. So we can talk about all the various different Murlocs that were introduced in Journey to Un'Goro, and we're not quite done with that yet. But by itself, Gentle Megasaur is the reason why Murloc Paladin survived into the new metagame. By itself, this card wins games, and it's a huge reason why Murlocidin is such an effective deck, and became such a major meta deck during Un'Goro and even today. This card is a game changer, and you can't ignore it. You can't just say, well, it's, the deck itself is powerful. No, this card by itself causes huge board swings and can win games by itself, and stat-wise, it's very powerful. So yeah, Gentle Megasaur, guys, it's probably near the bottom. If we did have to rank them, it probably is near the bottom of the deck. But just to give you an idea that this would be at the bottom of the deck, or bottom of the list, kind of shows you how powerful the cards we were talking about on this list are. This is a powerful card, and we are nowhere close to being done with talking about powerful cards. Because next up is Primordialglyph. I don't think anybody underestimated this card. Just the fact that for 2 mana, you can discover a mage spell. So you get a choice of 3 mage spells, and then it's discounted by 2. So you can play it later on in the game for cheaper. And mage has some of the best spells in the game. That kind of makes Primordialglyph by itself a must-have in pretty much any mage deck. This card is powerful, and it can give mage the answers it needs in a class that has a ton of answers already. This can cause a lot of frustration for people who don't think about planning for non-meta cards, and really it gives people outs that they might not have planned for initially, and for way less of mana cost than it normally would cost. There's really no downside to playing this. It's going to give you some good answers. Sometimes it whiffs, but not very often because it's a discover effect. And just the fact that, it's not very often that you come across a card in a new expansion, a class card in a new expansion, that's a must-have in every single class deck. But Primordialglyph is that good. You have to play it if you want to play a good mage deck.
Yeah, if anything, I think as soon as I saw this card, I'm like, yep, that's an auto of 2 craft. Because it's just like, you're gonna need it, and you're gonna want it. And if anything, going forward for these next couple of years, because Un'Goro's gonna be around until the 2019 rotation.
Yeah.
So, if anything, like, a lot of these cards that we're kind of talking about right now these are cards you can craft for the 2019 rotation that would be safe, I'd say. And Primordialglyph is definitely one of those cards to where you're just going to go, yeah, we're crafting 2 of these. We're going to need those for each deck that we play as far as our mage class stuff goes. And you're safe to craft it. Like, there's going to be no complaints if you do. Or if you do complain about crafting it, it's just like, what is wrong with you? Because this card is good.
So up next, Elise the Trailblazer.
Oh, this little mama right here. Just the amount of... Because like, I know where she found her real big home, and that was in Priest. So you just drop her on 5. She drops a free Ongoro pack into the deck. And if you can wait a little bit, pop her out, or pop out the pack, potentially get another Elise, drop another Elise, watch the pack go back into the deck, wait a little bit, oop, hey, look at there, another Elise, woo, more Elises, and just the amount of synergy and what some of the stuff that you can get from her pack alone can swing and change a game. So it's just, it's a safe craft, and it's one of those, yeah, you can cram it into almost any deck in that 5 slot, and just go, I'm good. Bulba.
There's always, during the lead up to an expansion, there's always that one neutral legendary that is seen as the must-have craft for pretty much any deck. It's the universal legendary. Sometimes, and actually I'm going to say most of the time, those type of legendaries, Eddie, they whiff. They aren't as effective as people think they are, and they kind of just, go the wayside. At least the Trailblazer was not overhyped. I'm not saying it's a game-breaking card, but it did not disappoint like some more recent legendaries have. It is that effective. It has decent stats. It's a 5-cost 5/5. It puts an extra card in your deck that can be used to essentially give you more resources. This is a card, and this can't be overstated enough. It's not a game-breaking card, like I said, but it's a card that can kind of fit into any deck. If you have a deck slot open, you can just fit this card into its deck, and it will give you options and resources later on in the game. It can give you answers later on in the game, and that just makes it a solid card in general. This was essentially the must-craft of the expansion, and really, there's not a bad choice to really put it in. You're not going to put this into every deck. I don't think that there are cards that have to be shoved into every deck. But it's not a bad option if you have some slots to fill. And it does a very good job in the decks you put it in. It's a very good all-around card. It's a solid card. It's a powerful card. Not too overpowered, but it's not something to be snubbed and ignored either. This was essentially this is probably one of the most recognizable cards in the expansion because people were paying attention to it from the very beginning, and this was the card that everybody was crafting. And, nobody regrets crafting Elise. Elise is awesome. Elise works, and people are still playing Elise today. So, yeah, that's why she really deserves to be on this list. Next up, we have Gluttonous Ooze. Now, to give you an idea, when we sit down to make the list, one of the things we talk about is a lot of the times we put all the tech cards into the initial rotation, and then when we start crossing cards out and getting rid of cards and try to narrow it down to 20 cards, normally tech cards are one of the first to go. The main reason for that is while a tech card can serve a certain niche and be very powerful in that respect, a lot of times they really aren't meta-defining or super powerful cards by themselves. Tech cards for a reason. They're essentially need to fill in a gap in your deck list, and you're trying to counter a specific type of strategy. Otherwise, they're normally not that type of powerful. So it's going to take a very special tech card in order to make it onto this list. And Gluttonous Ooze is that tech card. Starting from Meansters of Gadgetzan, weapons were a big issue. You really need weapon removal. Before then, it was acidic swamp ooze, because that was the only thing that was really quick enough to really help you stand a chance. But Gluttonous ooze is just as quick. I mean, it comes out a turn later than acidic swamp ooze, but really, that's no big deal. It still comes out super quick, and that's going to be quick enough to essentially take care of the weapons you need to take care of. Not only that, acidic swamp ooze just destroys a weapon. Gluttonous ooze gives you armor, which it just might give you the edge when going up against aggro or weapon type classes, or weapon type decks, should I say. That essentially makes it, when I'm looking at considering all the different tech cards, and we're talking about like the oozes, Harrison Jones, Eater Secrets, any of these tech cards to counter a certain type of strategy, Gluttonous ooze always rises to the top of my list, just because of being able to remove a really annoying weapon and give me armor, which essentially is health, which is essentially life gain. For 3 mana, that's a huge deal. And I'd say it's probably one of the most, if not the most, played tech card. And for a very good reason.
Yeah, this thing is nutty in just about every sense of the word, because it's just like, oh, look, I'm just going to drop this to just get rid of your Tesh. Or, oh, hey, I'm going against Pirate Warrior? Sweet. Build that big weapon. And I'm going to now just take it off. And just beat it senseless. No, just give me that armor. Go away weapon. Thank you for the armor. And just sit over there in the corner and think about what you've done now. You just sit over there and you think about that. Gluttonous ooze. One of my more favorite tech cards they've printed recently. I do have to say.
Next up, we have Tarcreeper.
Oh, Tarcreeper. For a 3-cost guy, or a 3-cost taunt for that matter, this thing is just so strong and so good. Because it's just, you can coin it out on turn 2 if you're going against an aggro deck. Or you can just play it on turn 3, just blank, and your opponent has to deal with a 3-5. Sure, when it comes back to your turn and it's got 1 attack, but given that most of your lower end minions have about 3 health, Tarcreeper is going to be a great clog sash stopper against those cards. And so, like, your decks like Taunt Warrior, Elemental, base decks, and hell, even your, if you want to throw this in the mix, your Inner Fire Priest decks. Tarcreeper's a really great addition to your deck. So, if anything, yeah, Tarcreeper makes this list for a lot of good reasons.
While it might not be much to look at, there's a reason almost every deck out there plays Tarcreeper. I mean, it was good enough that Jade Druid started playing Tarcreeper out the wazoo. They started playing some non-Jade taunts starting in this expansion, and there's a reason why. We're going to get into that. Tarcreeper, again, may not be much to look at, but essentially its job is to fend things off, and it does a very good job at that. It fends aggro decks off like no tomorrow, and it can even fend off mid-range or, long-range control decks. It's just a very solid card. It pretty much kind of keeps you alive, I don't want to say major damage, but 3 damage is quite a bit to pretty much any minion. So, I mean, it gives you a foothold to pretty much help remove minions. And in general, where its only job is essentially to protect your life, it does a terrific job of it. So, yeah, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, taunt minion that we got in the ongoing expansion. Next up is Vicious Fledgling, a.k.a. Flappy Bird. Come on, guys, you knew this one was on here. It for a card that everyone's like, ha 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 ha, it sure became a terror overnight, didn't it? The thing is, yes, it has 3 health initially. Oh, so many things can remove it, blah, 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 blah. The thing is, if you can't, and a lot of the times you can't, remove this thing, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And it's pretty much not going to attack anything but your face. And that's going to become a problem really quickly, because this card can snowball incredibly fast. I think I said something that this card was more powerful than people were giving it credit for when we did the card reviews, and I was right. You can't dismiss a card just because, hey, this can remove it, or this can remove it, or this can counter it, or this can counter it. Because, well, what if you don't have it, or what if you're not able to play it? And essentially, Flappy Bird is the perfect example of that. Especially old school aggro druid who were able to innervate it out on turn 1. That's going to be a lot harder to do now, but still, even if it takes, even if it doesn't come out on turn 1, it's still going to be very annoying to deal with. And Flappy Bird is not going away and not leaving aggro decks anytime soon.
Do you have a way to deal with this 3-cost 3/3 that can go to your face and just beat you to death? Either turn 1 or turn 2 in Druid. No? Well, game over for you, my good sir and or madam. Just seeing Druid, it's like, okay, it's one of 2 Druids. Innervate. Oh, no. Oh, bigger no. Do I have the top deck? Hopefully? Nope. Well, punch face. Oh, look, I got Wind Fury. Punch face again. Oh, look, I can't be targeted by spells or anything else now. Concede. On. But just Vicious Fledgling. Disgusting card. And now that you have Build-A-Beast, if you get this plus a Charger, no. Flappy Bird, why you do this?
Next up is Primordial Drake.
Oh, Primordial Drake. This one, I would say for both of us came out of left field. Because it's just, I think we both looked at it and just went, eh. But I was more along the lines of, I admit, what can I do with it? And it's just like, I figured out what to do with it after the expansion release. This thing is powerful. You had Jade Druids running it, you had Taunt Warriors running it, you had Dragon Priests running it. You could also make a case, an argument, again, for Inner Fire Priest running it. It was just, and it still is, a solid 8-drop. You can't kill it in Priest, because anything that we would try to deal with it, spell-wise, nope, kind of clamp down there, and then you go, I'm going to Dragonfire. Oh no, I forgot. I can't hit that with Dragonfire Potion. Seen that happen more times than I can flip and count, but it's just like, oh. Primordial Drake, solid 8-drop. Something I would highly recommend having 1 or 2 of. It's just so good. So good. Bob?
I think the reason why a lot of people probably underestimate this card was because a lot of people don't think that 2 damage AoEs are that big a deal, and this card pretty much proved 2 damage AoE is a big deal. You know, I mean, it's not as good as 5 damage AoE, but a 2 damage AoE is a huge freaking deal, especially if it's attached to a big taunt minion. So, yeah, Primordial Drake is very effective as a control tool, and you saw it pretty much start cropping up everywhere. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a lot stronger than we gave it credit for. Next up, we have the Caverns Below. Now, let me just preface this. When we're judging, essentially, the strongest cards, we do take nerfs into account. You know, just because a card got nerfed midway through doesn't mean it's no longer eligible. If it was that big a problem that it had to be nerfed, we need to consider it, and we need to consider why. Did it have a huge effect on the meta? Which is a lot of what we're looking at. We're looking at how meta-defining these cards are and how powerful these cards are. Because there can be some very powerful cards that aren't meta-defining and just didn't make it. But Caverns Below had a huge impact and came out of left field for a lot of people. Not us, we saw this one coming. But it became a huge problem in the meta and had to be nerfed. Now, I think the card, in the right circumstances, still can be playable, but it's not going to be an overwhelming experience. Now, I think it really did catch a lot of people off guard with how good this card is, with essentially the bounce back strategy being as effective as it was. And I think a lot of people weren't anticipating or really thinking about how good Rogue really is at bouncing cards back into its hands, bouncing minions back into its hands. So just the fact that Rogue was able to accomplish this very early, normally as soon as turn 4, and essentially end up swarming the boards full of 5/5s, yeah, this deck had to be dealt with, because even though it wasn't a major, wasn't winning a ton of games, it still was very overwhelming and just not fun to play against. And for as much as this deck shaped the meta, and for as powerful as this card was, we have to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I believe that the word that you were potentially looking for is oppressive.
There you go.
Because the Caverns Below deck itself was an oppressive deck. It created the aggro meta that was Journey to Ungoro. And if anything, don't get me wrong, after the change/shift before Knights of the Frozen Throne came out, you had aggro still being played, but it was a lot more drawn back. Because you didn't have to sit and go, well, can I finish this game up by turn 4 or turn 5? Because while I'm trying to ladder and climb, I could be running into a good chunk of this oppressive deck that just kept control off the planet. If anything, with Caverns Below, you have a deck that now it's not seeing as much play, which on one end is kind of sad, but at the same time, okay, I understand why the Wiffle Bat/Nerf Bat hit it. So that's why we have Caverns Below in our list. And if anything, we'll kick it back to Bulb.
Next up is Fire Plumes Heart.
Oh, this deck. I know the meme went around when it came to watching Fire Plumes Heart, or at least Taunt Warrior games. It was the whole, okay, let's see who can get the quest done the fastest, and then coin flip the best. Oh, it's 20-minute Hearthstone games, blah, 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 whatever. I don't mind that. Because if anything, it makes it to where every play counts. And you have to think, okay, I have this much mana available to me, and I have to be able to do this at X life total. Yeah, sure, the 8 to face, or at least 8 to whatever, on whatever turns that it would hit, had to happen, or at least happened. But this deck took a lot of active time to be able to get set up and actually get his knees under it, which again is fine for me. So if anything, I'm just gonna kick this in Bulb's direction.
This card by itself finally made Taunt Warrior viable, and I was very happy with that. I had been tweaking and trying to get Taunt Warrior to work for a long time, and I was so happy that that Taunt Warrior was finally in a state that it was actually playable, and it was viable, and it was a major meta deck. I kind of like that. I kind of enjoyed that. I kind of like that this quest was essentially one of the best quests, and it gave Taunt Warriors time in the sun, and it really created that experience, that deck I was trying to make. I appreciate it. It had a fun hero power, had a fun reward. I know some people didn't like it, but it was effective, and it was a strong meta deck all during Ungoro, it got its time in the sun, and I'm all for that. Next up is Radiant Elemental. Well, Mage has shown us if you have a minion that can discount spells, that's pretty powerful. And Radiant Elemental is extremely powerful. It's not a 3-2, it's a 2-3, but it has the Elemental tag, and Priest can heal it, and can keep it on the board for a lot longer if you need to. Plus, you can combo it with Priest of the Feast and Lyra, which we will be getting to soon, and spoilers, guys, sorry. And a lot of other really cool spells, and that can allow you, that can give you some freedom as different types of priests to really go off. It pretty much became a really, became a huge tool in Priest Arsenal to pretty much put together different types of control decks or different types of, just Priest decks in general, and it was just a very solid minion.
Oh, this bad boy. It gave Priest a solid 2-drop, which it hadn't had for a good while. And it's just, from there, it's become a staple in almost every single Priest deck. Because it's just that good. For 40 dust, you can craft this. Hell, you can craft 2 of it and have something incredibly solid. Highly recommend. Highly, highly good card. Especially with all the combo pieces you can do with it. Especially with, the low-end side of things. And, of course, the Lyra chains and everything else. Yeah, so good.
Next up is Lyra the Sun Shard.
Behold the glory of a new sun. God, this thing is nutty. I remember, I think it was Mike Donay that said that this was one of those cards that it would be really powerful. And some people just looked at it and went, hey, alright, that's cute and funny. And now, it's just oh god, this thing can swing a game as hard as possible. Just because of some of the spells that it can spit out. And you can just spend almost an entire turn just going Lyra and then just going and vomiting cards. I love it. This is one of those safe craft going ahead cards. Get it, take it, keep it, make it do whatever you need it to do. Bulb.
I remember being one of those who actually didn't think this card was that powerful. I actually thought this card was a joke. Man, was I wrong, because it pretty quickly became a must-craft for me. It's a must-craft for anybody who's going to be playing Priest. And I think we might as well just say it now. There were a lot of cards that we got wrong in Ngoro. I mean, surprisingly wrong in Ngoro that show up on this list. And we might as well say now that we learned a lot of lessons from Ngoro. And one of those lessons that Lyra kind of exemplifies, and that a lot of these other cards are going to exemplify that we underestimated, is that resource, that basically cards that give you resources, cards that essentially that do something and establish a board presence, and basically that just cards that just generate value in general. No matter how stupid you think the value is, are really good cards and really powerful cards, and you should not underestimate them. And that's what Lyra gives you. Lyra gives you resources and value. It's a value generator. It's a resource generator. And the one thing we got from Ngoro is that you cannot have enough resource generators. Resource generators by themselves are going to win you games. Doesn't matter how weak you think it is, how stupid you think it is, oh yeah, what good are priest spells? Well, when you can just generate as many as you want and do some wacky crazy things, doing wacky crazy things can win you games. Just having those resources and having choices allows you to make better decisions. And that's essentially what Ngoro taught us. And Lyra essentially becoming a must-craft and becoming one of the more powerful cards of the expansion essentially exemplifies the lessons of Ngoro when we judge cards in the future. So, next up we have Vile Spine Slayer. Speaking of a card that essentially was underestimated because of, this card's out there, Vile Spine Slayer, same deal. Yes, it's a combo effect. Yes, it's an effect of, a card that Rogue already has in particular Assassinate, and because it's a combo effect, that means it's going to cost more than Assassinate. But we have to stop downplaying the ability of being able to summon a minion and perform an effect and basically have something sitting on the field. Resource generation. And that's what Vilespine Slayer does. It essentially allows you to destroy a minion and have a minion on the field. You essentially create that momentum. You create that tempo that essentially Hearthstone relies on. And essentially you create value. And that cannot be understated enough. And that's why Vilespine Slayer was whole lot better than I thought it was, because I was not taking that into account. That's something that I know when we started looking at Knights of the Frozen Throne, and we did miss some stuff on Knights of the Frozen Throne, but I think we were a lot better because we started taking that into account of going, well, let's consider this. And Vilespine Slayer was essentially a huge wake-up call, along with some of the other cards that we've talked about, and potentially will talk about how just being able to generate future plays and being able to just do stuff and be able to move forward in your game plan is such a huge part of what makes a card powerful. And that's why Vilespine Slayer is on the list.
I think I call this one being actually good because it's just, oh look, between dropping the combo and the body, it was just like, boom, kill this, and have a body on board. I liked it. And if anything, it's just like, yeah, you can't not like something that just goes, kill, and give me a body. I'm fine with that. So it's just like, yeah. Vilespine Slayer is one of those other, if you're going to play Rogue, it's a good, easy, safe to craft, because you're going to want two of it.
Next up is Hydrologist.
A solid 2-drop when it comes to Paladin. Gives you a secret. So again, it plays into that generation of getting more and more value. Plus, it's a Murloc. So it goes and fits into that mid-Murloc niche. Doesn't matter when you get Hydrologist. It's just, you have Hydrologist in your deck as a 2-drop. And it's just, here you go. Go and have fun with it. It's the not wild version of Shield and Minibot. And it's just, it's so good. I can't not brag about it. Just not being good. Bulb.
Yeah, again we were going, well, Hydrologist, Anyfin is rotating out, so Murlocs won't be played. Yeah, we were wrong on that one, weren't we? And also, we were just looking at the fact of Paladin Secrets. Paladin Secrets in general just aren't that powerful compared to other secrets. So we're just going, why would you want, a free Paladin Secret? So that's why a lot of people I think were underestimating. It's why I know I was especially underestimating Hydrologist. But again, a card that freely generates resources, and again, yeah, Paladin Secrets may not be the best, but it's a free secret that you didn't have originally that you can tailor choose to the situation, and gives yourself more options, which makes Hydrologist actually very powerful. It's just a solid 2-drop, and it gives you more choices and more resources for later on in the game. It makes your opponent think. Not I can't plan around this, but actually think about what this could be because they didn't have it before. What could they be planning? What are the possibilities? And that can not be understated enough, that cards that generate value, that generate resources, and in this case with the Hydrologist of generating resources and giving you a body, are huge and should not be looked upon lightly and are very powerful, and that's why they became mainstays in this meta. Next up, we have Shadow Visions. Yeah, this one, I think we all saw this one coming. Shadow Visions, the ability to essentially look in your deck and find a copy of a spell that can help you deal with a current situation, or that you can hold back for a future answer, is huge. A lot of times, you would end up running to a wall as priest of you needed an answer and you just couldn't get the answer that was in your deck. And what Shadow Visions does is it essentially mitigates that. That can still happen, but not as often with Shadow Visions. Shadow Visions allows you to get to the answer that you need quicker than usual. You essentially are almost guaranteed to have an answer to a problematic situation, and that is huge for Priest. Priest is more of a controlling class in the first place, and just being able to have that option to basically say, nope, I have an answer for that now, and thanks to Shadow Visions, I can find it, is huge. It was an automatic 2 of in pretty much every Priest deck just because of that, and the fact that you can combine this with Elise to basically get more Angora packs, and you can combine this with cards like Lyra to create even more resources, essentially increase the value of this card, where a card that was already powerful and already would have appeared on this list just became even more valuable. So yeah, Shadow Visions, probably one of the most powerful spells introduced in this expansion, and for good reason, because being able to look and find the answer that you need is always a powerful effect.
I remember as soon as I saw this card, I was like, you know what? Crafting 2 of those. You're going to craft 2 of those. You're going to put those in every priest deck. And when you know it, I was right. So it's just like, yeah, just, you've already hit on all the buttons on all the value of it. So it's just like, I can't say much more.
Spike Ridge Steed.
This little number right here. Like, in Arena, where value is the king, having just one of these increased your win potential with Paladin. Having 2 of those made it basically off the charts. And then you go to Constructed, where this thing is a powerful on 6, plug it into a minion. If I'm going against aggro and they're trying to just go face and not deal with my board, I plug it into a minion and just clog the aggro's run. Barring a silence effect, which it basically made Spellbreaker have to come into that active metagame because I don't want to have to keep dealing with Spike Ridge Steeds and double taunts. Just, this thing was nasty. Like, at first it was one of those things where I know we both looked at it and we just went, eh? But, man, did we learn our lesson on that one. Bob?
Ha ha ha! Well, that's a cool effect, but it costs 6 mana. Oh, no one will ever play that. Yeah. Yeah, it can only give you +2/+6 in health and it spawns a minion afterwards, but again, resource generation, and the fact of what paladins tend to slam this on, ends up creating some very beefy bodies, which is very hard to deal with when you're going up against a mid-range or control paladin deck. Or even, I think, pretty much any paladin deck. It's just very hard to deal with. And I think that's what we didn't anticipate, was that it was powerful because it creates bodies that are very hard to deal with, and if you do happen to deal with them, find a way to deal with them, unless you silence them or polymorph them, what you ended up is you got rid of one big body, and now you have another big body. Good going there, Tex. Have fun with that. Yeah, it was very annoying, and it essentially became a must-include in pretty much most paladin decks. It was a very solid spell, and yeah, I think the cost kept a lot of people from really seeing how powerful it really was, but once people started playing it, yeah, there's no denying how big a game changer this spell was. Next up, we have Firefly. Now, Eddie was a sneaky little bugger and managed to kind of sneak this one by under the radar. He was hard-headed enough that while there was the big argument between Gentle Megasaur and another major card, he managed to kind of just sneak this common card in, and it made the list. Firefly is essentially probably one of the most common 1-drops played. It's pretty much played in most most decks. It's not played in every deck, but it's played often enough that you are going to see Firefly a lot in the meta. It just, again, creates resources. It's a solid one-drop body. It kind of just does its job. It's not a huge deal or anything. It's not like a lot of the other cards here, but just the fact that it was everywhere in the meta, that it helped define decks like Evolve Shaman and Caverns Below and Quest Rogue. Essentially kind of gives it mention, and it deserves a spot on the list. Now, there are a lot of cards. In fact, most of the cards on this list are a lot powerful than this card, and more powerful than this card. But sometimes power doesn't win the day. Sometimes it's just the fact that it's everywhere in the meta, and it makes its own name for itself, and it's recognizable. And Firefly makes the list because of that.
Let us not forget the fact that, if anything, Token Druid ran this little bugger. And if anything, now you also get to see, when it comes to the nerfs, you're seeing more cards, or at least more decks, kind of try to put this little one drop in there. It's a resource generator because it gives you another 1/2 in hand. And while I would say it was in its strongest in the Caverns Below deck, because it was just, oh look, I can potentially generate a 1-cost 5/5 and then get another one to hand. It's just, this little number right here has snuck around to, I would say, almost every class at some point and went, hi, I'm here to help. And you're going to want me to be able to at least do something. So, you may say I snuck it in, but if anything, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't not at least look at this and just go, this is a good card, and not have to say that it shaped things going forward.
And given how close we are to end, it's kind of this card that kind of looks up, sees Gentle Megasaur and Bittertide Hydra fighting to the death, and it just kind of goes doo 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 doo, and just goes under, just walks past them. I just find it hilarious.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, like, I still fight at least a little bit as far as Bittertide Hydra goes, because it's just like, you can put it on this list, but at the same time, it's just, you also have to, I would say it would be the 21st card on the list.
Like I said back with Gentle Megasaur, it came down to the wire. We fought over that one. But let's get back onto the cards that are on the list. With the next one being Earthen Scales.
Good night. Like, have you ever wanted to see yourself gain 10 health in one turn? Why not play Jade Druid with it? Oh, look! I can also draw a card from it because I have my Gadgetzan Auctioneer on board. This Earthen Scales card, this thing was nasty. Like, even now, you can still run it. Even with the fact of Skulking Geist being a threat. But it's just more or less, this thing was just, here's some armor. I don't care how much armor you get, you're getting armor. Shut up, deal with it.
I'm just going to come out and say it. I think it was this card that essentially allowed Jade Druid to rise from prominence, and rise into prominence, starting in the Ungor meta. It had been around during Gadgetzan, but I'd say this card essentially gave it this card and Primordial Drake gave it the resources it needed to really survive and to survive into the late game and keep on surviving past the decks that wanted to kill it. It essentially allowed Jade Druid to essentially start overcoming its weaknesses. This card by itself influenced the meta in that way, and it by itself that's why it's such a powerful card, because this card essentially allowed Jade Druid to start overtaking the meta, and that cannot be overstated enough. That's why this card is on here. This card by itself made Jade Druid powerful and started to make Druid powerful this year.
Now, going in as far as for Knights of the Frozen Throne, ooh, buddy.
Next up, we have Sunkeeper Tarim. I remember looking at this and said, this is going to allow Control Paladin to essentially become a strong deck. And Control Paladin became a strong deck. Now, it's used in other decks, but mainly it's used in mid-range and mainly Control Paladin variants. Because it's very good at allowing Paladin to get rid of big things. And allowing Paladin to buff up its small things to take out said big things. That makes it very good at controlling the board. And it's actually a very strong control tool. And, that makes it a very powerful card because in a meta that started to have big Jades and big creatures and dinosaurs, being able to reduce them down to 3/3s and just start wiping the board with them is a very powerful effect. And that helped Paladin become one of the top tier classes.
I guess I saw this and I was just like, yeah, this is going to be good. And then you just kind of look at it and see how it just basically shaped Paladin as a class. Because it's just this thing. Like, the fact that you could just, like you said, bring cards down to 3/3s. Add to the fact that you could also make it to where you can power up your own board. In Wild, dude it in. I say dude it in because it's just like on 5, I'm playing the 5-cost summon 5/1/1 little paladins. On 6, if you've not cleared my board, there's 5 3/3s on my board going face potentially. And it's just this thing, along with one of the other cards we haven't gotten to mention yet. I don't know if it's the last one or if it's next, but just having multiples of this, for that matter, just became nutty. And it just made it to where you could just control board entirely.
And finally, we have Stonehill Defender.
That little booger right there is by far, and I'm going to be the one that sits here and states it, is by far the strongest card in Journey to Ungoro. Look, it's a 3-drop. Find yourself a taunt. At first, when you look at it, just on the surface level, you're like, where could I put it? What classes could benefit? You take a look at Shaman, and you could pull so many good taunts out of Shaman. You take a look at Paladin. Paladin alone, it was basically, here's a 3-cost discover a legendary, shut up. This card, again, I say it, for 200 dust, if you've got it to blow and you don't already have it, use the 200 dust, craft it, put it in your Paladin, Shaman, and heck, even if you want to, you can put it also in your Priest deck, because Priest also has a taunt card that came from this set that could benefit from it. So, if anything, Stonehill Defender, I have to say, is the strongest card in this set, bar none, because even you also threw it into your taunt warrior as well, and just kept generating resources. Just strongest card of the set.
Yeah, what a lot of people missed when they were initially judging this card is they were just looking at the stat line. And they missed how big an effect being able to discover a taunt minion was. Especially since Discover tends to have this tendency to favor class cards over, like, neutral cards. So, it became, initially, yeah, a lot of people were putting it, like, in Paladin or, like, not Paladin, but, like, Warrior or other control decks. And then Paladin discovered, because of that little favor it gives to your class, they had a higher chance of either getting another Tyrion or another Sunkeeper Tarim. And man, they could do a lot of things. This essentially makes it a go-to card. This is essentially a go-to card when you're pretty much crafting, I'd say, any control deck. Because most of these classes that are, like, most of these control classes, whether it's Priest, Warrior, Paladin, we're not talking about Mage. Mage doesn't really have any good taunts. But Shaman especially, you want this in there because you're more likely to come up with to get a very solid taunt minion to help you control the board than you are a, weak taunt minion. It's just very strong in general. And whenever I'm coming up with a deck and I'm trying to figure out what the deck does, and it has a few taunts or it's very controlling in nature, I automatically start considering Stonehill Defender. When I built my Frost Shaman deck, and I looked at the number of taunts I was running, I'm going, I want Stonehill Defenders in here to help me continue my win con and try to get some of these taunts I'm including in this deck, so I have more of these, so I can do more of what I want. And in general, I just have better options. Shaman, not Shaman, but Paladin. When I built a Control Paladin deck at the beginning of the Knights of the Frozen Throne meta, Stonehill Defenders were an automatic include. So this is an incredibly powerful card, and again, it essentially exemplifies that essentially giving yourself resources is incredibly powerful. Because this is a card that you play, it has a decent body for when it gets out, but you're not playing it for the 1/4 body, you're playing it for the future turn, the future taunt minion. It's probably a big taunt minion. You can slam down later and go, come at me, bro. And so that's incredibly powerful. Anyway, guys, that's our top 20 cards from Journey to Un'Goro. We're planning on doing more of this type of stuff in the future. This does take a little bit to actually prepare, so don't expect the next one soon. But there will be more in the future. If you did like this, if you want to talk about other powerful cards that we may not have considered, you can talk about it down in the comments. We may even say why it did not make the list, and we might talk about that card some more. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time.
Bye.